program contains material that viewers may find unsuitable for younger children. A parental control system is advised. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. For a real view, real opinion, and for an honest conversation, it's time to Get Real with Mahieash Johnney. Tonight, coming to you from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Get Real. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us tonight. We obviously want to talk about the current crisis that we are at. With regard to a cyclone recovery phase, that's where we are entering right now in the shorter term. And as we move on, we will be looking at the longer term recovery efforts and how this will keep on impacting Sri Lanka's economy. Well, sad to say, Sri Lanka's economy can't catch a break. Since 2019 onwards, we've been getting hammered with crisis after crisis, and how we manage those crises in the aftermath is the testament that would take us out of that crisis or keep us simmering in that crisis towards another impending crisis. Now, 2022 was one of the best opportunities for us to start anew. We could have think about new economic models. We could have thought about new ways of governing, new ways of implementing economic policies. But guess what? We chose to do the same old thing over and over again that has not brought us any result, because apparently being comfortable in what you know is the comfortable thing that people are opting to do, even our leaders. Right now, the Cyclone Ditwah's economic impact is yet to be assessed. There are indicators right now that says it could be in the range of 6 to 7 billion US dollars. That's a substantial amount. Now, where is that money going to come from? How is that going to impact our economy? Every single person in this country is suffering. Is this going to help them, or is this going to deplete them completely and make living in Sri Lanka a horrible experience for its citizens? Well, in order to get an understanding of that, tonight with me is Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, Professor of Business Economics, and he is also from the University of Colombo, the Vice Chancellor, former Vice Chancellor. Thank you very much, Professor, for being here. Appreciate you coming on the show in order to give us an indicator and an understanding of what exactly is happening and how this will impact in the longer term. Right now, we are already in the IMF program. Now, that is a program we seem to be unable to get out of. In that program, I think the fifth tranche was supposed to come at the end of this month. And right before that, we get hammered by a cyclone, which it wasn't a cyclone that impacted like a couple of provinces. It impacted the whole nation. Now we're counting to over 1 million people affected. I think around 6,000, 7,000 houses completely destroyed. Now the rebuilding effort is going to put the price tag around 7 billion. That is the initial estimate. So we don't know really what the estimate is going to be, bringing livelihood back and the impact to the economy. How do you assess this current situation?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. What we have to understand that Sri Lanka in the history, we have faced 3 cyclones. This is the third one. First was 1964, over 1,000 died, and then second was 1978. And this was the third cyclone. Of course, we know this happens because of the climate change and the man-made difficulties. So anyway, this time, actually, this is an unexpected crisis, but started from the cyclone. As a result, massive impact on the economy happens. As you said, that it is about 6 to 7 billion estimated at the initially, but it would be more than in future. That we know in 2022 we had the economic crisis because we lost about 12 billion suddenly in 2022 due to the tourism and other export income came down. So this time, of course, it is not the external sector. It has hit the domestic sector of the economy. Particularly, we know the agriculture sector production and the industrial sector and, of course, services sector production recovery is the most important impact we have to do. We have to improve the recovery of all these three sectors. And of course, the damage, as you mentioned, that it is severe. So all the areas where we know in a macroeconomy, particularly economic growth. After 2022, we just came into 4.8, 4.9 economic growth. But this year, of course, this damage to the agriculture sector, transportation, damage to the storage, and particularly utilities, electricity, water, and on the other hand, that we know the people are suffering due to a lot of difficulties in small businesses and other parts also. So we have to understand that the most positive thing is every crisis can be converted into a great opportunity. The best example is the Japan. In 1945 they lost the war, and of course they converted into opportunity. In Sri Lanka we lost such opportunities even in 2004.
Given many opportunities.
Many opportunities. 2018, of course 16, and of course the East attack, and then the 2022. And I hope that this time we need to focus and we need to rebuild the nation by collecting every person's idea. The most crises we could not succeed because of the contribution made by relevant people not happen. So therefore, leading people must understand that the getting support of all the ideas, the collaboration, cooperation and network. Any crisis coming to the economy that hit the rural sector, the Sri Lanka is a very important country because we have a very good rural administration system. That even from the historically we had very good administration system, and after colonial period also we had very good administration system in the Sri Lanka grassroots level. Particularly in today, if you take any village, at least there are 7 to 10 public officers in any rural village, starting from Garama Nildari, Samurdhi Nildari, PHI, midwife, the even social services officer, women development officer, agriculture instructor, agriculture development officer, livestock officer. So if you study any rural area, we have 7 to 10 public sector officers. The most important thing, we have to empower them. We have to trust them. We have to provide a good training for them. We have to start from the grassroots level, transformation.
So transformation is absolutely vital. Now, in order to do the transformation on the grassroots level, Professor, now one thing we have to get it right is the economic policies. The economic policies thus far which we have had, in my opinion, is not exactly gearing us towards a developmental growth, but it's more or less, okay, you can manage it a little bit, but it is more towards begging from other countries, give us more money, or some kind of institutions to give us more money, because we can't sufficiently create the capital we need within the country, rather than asking a lot of loans. Loans are required, but loans are really bad when you're down at the depths and you don't know how to repay them. But when you have money, of course, you can rotate and create more new money by taking loans and investing them for investment purposes, which would generate business income. But right now, do you see the policies helping us towards that particular point that you made, saying, we have an opportunity here for regrowth, but it has to come from the top down. So does that prevail right now?
Yeah, the issue is coming, how do we prepare policies and who is contributing policies, is that the policy is scientific. The economics is a science, not art. There's a debate. But why, if you take, for example, Japan, there is an economic planning agency.
Yeah.
Scientifically, they collect all information, they do analysis, and they prepare the policies, and whatever the government coming to the power, they have to accept the economic planning agency policies. Unfortunately, in Sri Lankan context, we don't have economic planning agency. Of course, central bank is governing monetary policy, and the fiscal policy is governing by the Ministry of Finance. And other policies, agriculture policy, we give it to the agriculture department or agriculture ministry, something like that. So integrated approach for policy making is number one for the country. And the institutional
Does that
development
exist in other countries?
Yes, that's what I cite. Japan, they have an economic planning agency.
So that agency is not political?
Not political, appointed PhDs in economics, the more than 100 PhDs, they do research and they find and they recommend, they provide the policies, and those policies taking into parliament and discuss, and those policies are coming as the society, they can implement it. But the most important thing, the policy preparation in Sri Lankan context, going with the elections. When the election come in, different parties provide, so this is our manifesto, this is our manifesto. Then once they win, they believe that is the correct, and they are trying to implement it. Right? So, but that is not the way. I think that we need to have economic planning agency number one in Sri Lanka. And the direction should be going with the data collection, information sharing, and based on information we have to take decisions. In economics we say the decision making should be information based. Otherwise the decision making is influencing by politics, relationships,
and emotions.
There are various ways the decisions are not going on. So therefore I think the best way that I think this chance happen in Sri Lanka, we need to collect all
why do you think we have not been able to crack that code? If there are so many countries that is following that particular rule, and so many countries are saying here is the institution that safeguards our economy, and they are the ones like the guardians of our economy, and you have international affairs in all these institutions, because you can't understand the everyday politician to be masters of all this. So they have to have an institution that is more focused on the country rather than the party or the personal affairs of that particular individual. So why do you think we have been unable to do this? And consecutively, I think from the 70s onwards, we should have been doing this. Yeah,
you know what happened when we got the independence, that we had some positive points, like we had a trade surplus. Actually, when the British gave the independence, we had a trade surplus. So what we have been doing that directly involving the Ministry of Finance and the central bank, that pumping into the society as free education, free health, free nutrition, and because we had to have more poverty reduction strategies, but not industry development, not economic development based on that. Then only when it comes to 1970s, we realized that these policies are not enough. So mainly this Mahaweli development and other projects started. So whatever the thing that did the central bank and the Ministry of Finance is not sufficient. That's what the modern way of thinking. The policy making should have a different approach. So that approach first we have to promote. But since this is a crisis, of course crisis is one incident that can trigger the many other things in the economy. In that case, post-crisis, what can we do? That's the most important thing. When a developing country getting this kind of crisis, we get sympathy from the other countries, we get many donations, and we can capitalize these donations. And of course, this time
we're talking about donations and not loans.
Not loans, yeah. That of course donations, and of course we have to negotiate with them for other things, the industry collaboration, sharing information. So these are very, very important, because this crisis, the special character is this has linked to the environment. So environmental crises we can't overcome with ourselves only. One country, one person cannot overcome. So therefore, global network is essential. So to what extent we can put the effort to get more global attention for the environmental crisis and sustainable development. So this is particularly like UNDP, World Bank, IMF, like these multilateral organizations, everywhere they focus on the sustainability and the environmental degradation. So therefore this should be a incident where we are seeking more closely a relationship with the multilateral organizations to overcome future. Because this is a cyclone. Cyclone can happen next year also. Yeah. Cyclone can repeat again and again. So as I
the indicator stuff that is really high now.
Yeah.
So, Professor, one thing that I want to get a clarification. Yes, right now we've been told with regard to the IMF program, $200 million is what the IMF looking at in order to give us. Now, most of our civilians or day-to-day Sri Lankans believe 200 million, that's a good effort by the IMF, that's a generous effort, good thing, we can start rebuilding, all that. But is this a loan or is this a grant? Because if it is a loan, this is going to pile up on whatever the number of, I think it's past 100 billion right now, our debt portfolio. Now, that is going to increase as well in 200. So, that is also a concerning point because it is the same people who are in crisis right now will have to pay for it later down the lane. So how do we manage this? Because taking loans is very much lucrative at this particular moment because it's a crisis. We can go and cry to the world and the world will happily give us. But there is a downfall to that, isn't it?
Yeah, the issue is in case of Sri Lanka that, you know, from the 1978, we had the trade deficit. So every year, 2 to 3 billion US dollars we were losing. Imports and other foreign payments are higher than whatever our earnings. So that is how the total collection of debt we came. And when we take any year, 2 to 3 billion we have to cover from the foreign currency. So this 200 million is nothing in that sense, right? So so foreign, what we are getting, institute like IMF cannot be a grant. Usually whatever, even from 2022, we pace out and we have obtained support from the IMF, but we have to pay back. The IMF never give grants to all the countries in the world.
Even in a situation like this?
No. It's a financial institute where they try to have financial stability in the world. So that the financial stability does not mean that they donate the money and they finish everything. So therefore, what we have to do that we have to negotiate with them whatever the maybe grant element, maybe the long-term payments, a small number of payments or the interest rate free or something grant element can be there. But we cannot expect the grants from IMF usually. So whatever we are thinking, we need to overcome through our own production economy, our own service economy, our own agriculture economy. How do we push these three things? Very important.
There is a conversation that has been going back and forth with these two camps, which believes that growth internally is the vital way and the only way to get out of a crisis, and the other camp that talks about it, no, we don't have the ability to become that, so we will be something else, like a hub of this or hub of that. And this conversation has continuously gone for, I think, for the past 10-15 years, and there is no resolution in sight. So it is a very vital thought to keep looking at, because I also strongly believe that internally only we can find solutions rather than looking outward there. But let's take a short commercial break. When we return, I want to ask the professor with regard to how these economic policies needs to be completely tweaked and also practice, because it is vital now. If we are talking about the agriculture economy, agriculture being a strong effort where we are actually making some kind of income from that, selling it out. How can we actually do that at a moment where everything is completely destroyed? How can we bring that back? There are conversations going with this government. They say that they want to talk to and educate the farmers with regard to the Maha season that is going to come. But let's see how that will go around. I'm in conversation with Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, business economist and former Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo. We'll be right back. You're watching. Welcome back everyone to Get Real. I'm in conversation with Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, a business economist and also the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo. We've been talking about Cyclone Ditwah, its post-recovery efforts, and how we can actually make the policies that would be favorable towards growth rather than repeating the same old cycle where we are in a very low state. I think earlier it was like a developing nation. I don't know where we are right now in terms of in that category, but want to understand that particular element as well. Professor, explain to me how the rulers of this nation right now, President Andrew Kumar Dissanayake and his government, the economic ministers, all these individuals who have been really busy with the IMF program and trying to make sure that we meet the targets, and here we are, there's another crisis. I don't know whether they have factored that element could happen when they were making the plans. Now, because the Prime Minister and even the President had to come back to Parliament and say we have to change the budget. So that means there is an indicator to say that they did not plan that some crisis would happen, and if a crisis happens, how can we actually pull that money and do the initial recovery phase of it? What exactly is required right now if we are to make sure that, despite the fact, like you earlier very well said, we can't stop natural disasters. That will come even in another 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, 6 months, 1 year down the line, we might have another crisis, a natural, not a man-made, a natural crisis. There could be man-made crises as well. So how can we actually take that and factor it into our policies and make sure that we don't fall into pitfalls that will completely erode our economy? Because right now, we made progress and it looks like we are at ground zero.
Yeah. Thank you very much for very valid question you're asking. Actually, the number one is we have to educate the people, providing more information about what's happening, so that we need to strengthen our information collection, information sharing, and collective actions. So the number one is we have to inform the people the severity of the natural disasters, and the natural disaster happen. People have to expect there will be a natural disaster. For example, I'll take one example from Japan. Every day there is a small earthquake in Japan, right? So, but they have designed each village where to go. If there is a disaster, where to go. But after tsunami, we started this tsunami warning and other parts, but then gradually it has come down. Today, we are not using these parts. So the important thing that the education on disaster, the disaster education must take place, and the information collection and information sharing must collect. I think the country like Japan or country like the everyday disaster coming, we need to get their support and learn how it is going on. And not only that, the crisis once happen, then there is the short-term effect, medium-term effect, and the long-term effect. Now, because of the cyclone, of course, we are talking about much on the short-term effect, where the prices will go up, the things will not sufficient, there will be food shortage, there will be other kind of shortages. These are short-term impact. But we need to plan for medium-term impact and the long-term impact. For that, I think we need to build the systems.
What kind of things might happen in the medium term and in the long term?
Medium term, that as we know, that if we are not pushing the production economy, particularly agriculture sector, if we don't push today, I think the President rightly pointed out one time that ask them to cultivate in as early as possible. But we need to educate these things more into the rural level, using that 7 to 10 officers in the grassroots level. So that this education is essential. Start production as early as possible. Then the second and the most important part, that once they produce, then there should be a system to purchase for their system. There should be system agriculture. We know the intermediate person is dominating in Sri Lanka. The why we are developing, particularly agriculture sector, producer, farmer is suffering, consumer is also suffering, intermediate middleman is there. This is known story for everyone. But there's no system still proposed for that. We have been talking on this many times, even before elections, after elections. But how can we support the farmers? Like, say, for example, in Japan, there has been a farmers' cooperatives where farmers try to transport and the linking into the value addition. So how do we go for the value chain? So the value chain, strengthening value chain is essential, particularly for agriculture sector or the small and medium-sized businesses or the large businesses. So this connectivity is missing in Sri Lanka. That's the issue coming. So the production, not only production is there, the system of distribution, system of the consumption, we have to develop gradually.
In terms of managing the loans per se, because I know I am crying foul maybe way too early, but there is something that we can learn from the past, is that every single penny that we take from abroad, we got to pay double later on. And this conversation in 2022 was, well, this country took so much of loans by these rulers, loans is the problems, loans is this, loans is that, and if you haven't taken loans, our future would have not been so depleted, so dark. Now, we are not even having that conversation anymore, because the ones that they wanted to get out through that conversation and through that argument, they got out. Now the people who are in power is very gleefully taking loans after loans after loans and not talking about that particular fact. But I want to remind is that is going to be a problem, isn't it, Prof?
Yeah, of course, depending on loans will not solve. But there are some countries where came out as a developed country with the loans as well. The best example is Japan. In 1950s, they took the World Bank loans to later build the bullet train and many infrastructure.
That is
many infrastructure they built.
Investment on development.
Yeah, investment on development. And by 1970s, they gradually started paying. By 1980s, they paid all. And by 1990s, they were the world's largest donor. So the managing loans are very, very important. Managing loans are very important. In case of Sri Lanka, where we have created capital to a certain extent, say for Hambantota Port, Mattala Airport, or the Nelum Kuluna. So why are not marketing now, at least, for example? So blaming history will not solve the problem. Now, why Sri Lanka has taken loans? For what purposes? To build Mahaveli reservoirs, to build free trade zone, to build those
even those items which you mentioned, Mattala Airport, even these are things that we can actually make it like a cash cow.
That's what the problem is. The global marketing is very weak. We need to market this at global level. So that's the issue basically. In fact, when I was talking to one economist in Japan, he also told that nothing wrong. You have taken loans, but you have invested it. Why don't you market this investment now? If you are not marketing, who's going to marketing for your projects? So that is the basic issue. So we need aggressive marketing system.
That actually indicates there are so much of gray areas from the education sector, from the classroom to the professional level, to the management level, to the leadership level of this country. All these areas are working in silos, and they're not interconnected, because if children were taught that all these kinds of economic, I know there are economic as a subject in school, but it's not per se the economics of modern day. It's just some kind of theoretical thing. They're trying to figure it out, and there are institutions that does it well. But it does not address issues. Okay, if you take an IMF loan, what's going to happen to you? If you take a loan from a nation and use it for consumption rather than investment, what's going to happen to you? All that kinds of things. It doesn't matter. Forget about foreign loans. Let's take your individual family, Professor, because if you take a loan and you can't pay because you are not earning enough, then there's going to be a problem. It's going to keep increasing over and over again with the interest rates. So right now, education is pivotal. Yeah.
Now the important thing in education, as we have earlier many times pointed out, the financial literacy and entrepreneurial education. So entrepreneurship is the best way to develop this country. If we cannot convert people into entrepreneurial thinking, we cannot develop this country. That's obvious. So particularly the education reform is being done. I heard that there is a subject going to be in financial literacy and entrepreneurship. This has been pushed by many people in long period. Of course, in the school level, we need to think, we need to teach them about entrepreneurial thinking and the financial literacy, how to manage your own money. That is the basic for this. So that, for example, after this cyclone also, now government has introduced this much of 25,000 for each house and the 50,000 for
is that doable, Professor?
The large amount, because of course the foreign grant they got, and the second, in Sri Lanka there's a special case where we are not talking about. Every year we have government budget, but which will account only 30% or the 35% practically spending money. And this year may be very serious because the last year we
Why is that, Professor? Is it because the money pot is there and we are not spending? Or we are just saying, okay, the money pot will be there and we are, very, very presumptuous of it and thinking that, okay, it's something that will happen, and then just forecast numbers on this side which shows a completely erroneous picture. Is that the reason, or is it because the money is really there, but we are failing to?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. It's a combination of all, but most important thing, the government procurement system. That very recently also they told that they will change the government procurement system, but we need to change, we need to address this government procurement system. So as a result, the money allocated for each ministry is not going to finish within that. So particularly the last year budget, I heard that some government institutes, still 40% they have not spent. So the government can use that 60%. That's why I think the president is pushing that use it before December 31st, because the previous experience, we know that particularly this year, the budget came later. So as a result, 2025 budget I'm talking about. So maybe some government institutes less than 50% they have allocated and spent because of the procurement system. And the procurement system we need to digitalize, so we need to take it into modern way. The construction and the particularly investment and the infrastructure development, we allocate large amount from the government money, but it is not happening practically.
You made a really crucial point there, Professor, when you said that apparently the current economic system is as such that we just keep the money and not invest. And that also alludes to the fact that we really need to restart this entire business cycle mechanism. Just not only us, even we have to get the outsiders to come and start doing businesses here in Sri Lanka as well. So FDI is what I'm talking about. Right now, it looks like post-cyclone, the best thing that we can do to our nation is start business as usual and restart the economic phase so that we will not be stuck at this recovery phase for a longer period, and we can actually come out of it, and people can start on to get on with their lives rather than completely being disarray about it. How do you think we can now go back out there and get the investors to come in here, or even locally look at the investors who are there who can actually make a bigger impact rather than what they are doing right now, and to restart their efforts? Because is that happening in your opinion?
Yeah, the issue is that there are things we can do even without finance or without much affected. The number one is in Sri Lanka. Do you believe that the total land, if you say, the 93% still belong to government? Only private sector belong to 7%. So there are large government ministries and institutes. They are keeping government land, not giving it to the private sector. So any country, if you want to develop, the two areas you have to focus. One is export growth. The other one is mobilizing private sector. So the land ownership should be given to agricultural farmers or the investors to cultivate more. Even if you go from Colombo to highway in down south, you see the both side how much arable land available in Sri Lanka we are not cultivating. So the agriculture, if you want to develop agriculture, that the most important thing, the privatizing agricultural lands. So the over 90% of land of Sri Lanka belong to government. So why can't we go for land reform system? We need to go for land reform system. So then the agriculture can be mobilized, and particularly when the foreign investor coming, he should get a place to invest it. And on the other hand, that we, because of the cyclone, then again the environmental impact assessment is a very important aspect, because there will be more protest and other part coming from they are saying the environmental protection. But environmental protection always can do without harmful for the development. So by balancing those two, we can go ahead. So the agriculture sector, I think land reform is a very important thing. Those who can cultivate, those who are using modern technology adaptation, they can go for higher production in agriculture.
Indeed, there's a little bit more to talk about with regard to how we can rebuild our economy and to bring it back to a level where we can actually absorb these kinds of natural disasters. Like we said earlier on, these disasters are not going to come once and never come again. It's going to repeat. The repetitive moment is now going to increase rather than decrease. So how can we manage? That is what's really crucial. COVID came. COVID was managed very well, but then the aftermath of it, we kind of fumbled. That led towards the 2022 crisis. Now 2022 crisis, we're somehow coming out of it, and now here we are with another crisis. Should we go down with this crisis or actually get up? There's no other choice than to get up. That is the only way possible. I'm in conversation with Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne, a business economic professor. Let's take a short commercial break. You're watching Get Real. Welcome back everyone to Get Real. I'm in conversation with Senior Professor H.D. Karunaratne. He is the Chair Professor of Business Economics at the University of Colombo. We've been talking about the recovery phase, and Professor, you made a really good point prior, which you said COVID was an external factor and it hit our external accounts, and these cyclones is now going to hit our internal accounts. What's the difference?
Yeah, before the COVID, of course, we got about $7 billion from the remittances. It came down to 2 to 3 billion, and we got about $4 billion from the tourism, it hit to millions, very small amount. And of course, our exports also declined. So totally, we lost about 12 billion US dollars. That is why we could not import oil, and all the crisis and everything came because of that. We lost the 12 billion US dollars. But when there is a cyclone, it is internal, where the other side is the government revenue and the government expenditure. So of course, the one important thing after COVID, Sri Lankan economy could improve the government income by imposing taxes. We know about 36% income tax, and many taxes came out. So as a result, and one important aspect that we know in 2022, because of the crisis, the banks started paying about 30%, 28% interest rate for people. Most of those people got caught to the taxes in the previous year. So the government tax revenue went up. Now the tax rate has, the interest rate has gone down. It's about now 7%. So now the next year government cannot take that amount from the financial sector. Okay, taxes are, of course, we know that taxes should be strongly increasing, but it's a kind of a boom we had where the financial sector gave about 20 to 30% interest rate for private deposits at that time. They had to pay about I think higher taxes later. Now the situation is that the government introduced a large package of money, where if they can manage with the unspent part of the budget, or if they can manage with the foreign currency coming to us, it is okay. Unless if the government expenditure going higher and higher because of crisis, then the revenue will not enough, then there can be again the budget gap in future, growing budget gap. So so therefore that usually any economy has two gaps. One is external gap, the other one is internal gap. Internal gap starting from the government revenue minus government expenditure. So the government expenditure, of course, we have negative budget gap. All the time we have a budget gap. Yeah. So that will affect if the government expenditure increasing large amount, but the revenue will not increase. But the better thing that we had a very good revenue growth with the hope of this increasing taxes. The only thing, if the economy is not doing well, you can't keep continuously that same amount of tax.
In your opinion, what are the industries that might get hammered in the shorter term to the medium term?
Number one is the agriculture, that of course very, very serious. And of course tourism will come over the long run, we can improve. Of course one thing, the remittances we will get more because of the sympathy and other thing that will be better off. The industrial sector, where the raw materials importation and that part is essential. So the services, particularly this infrastructure and the economic infrastructure, and we have social infrastructure, where the economic infrastructure we know that particularly the electricity, water, gas, all these things, the short term you have to do rehabilitation. Large amount of investment you have to do for water supply, electricity, gas. That, say for example, electricity, every house underwent water, you have to change the meter. So it's an additional cost to the country, right? So
does that mean you expect electricity prices to go up?
Yeah, if the electricity production will not go, if we cannot shift into solar or some other method, the renewable energy, then definitely electricity price will increase.
In terms of consumer products, where do you see there could be a price fluctuation? Because food is going to be an impactful area as well. I think the government is doing a lot of efforts to keep it at nominal rates. But there could be certain small spikes that we might see. In other consumer goods, where do you see?
I don't think others, mostly what we are importing is okay because of the, we know we are getting grants and other elements from the abroad. So therefore dollar will be a little bit stabilized. So there was a couple of weeks ago, people thought that the dollar went from 300 to 311 soon. So now I think because the foreign currency coming, If we are not utilizing quickly, that the dollar will be balanced. So the imported items will not go so high. Only the local production items we have to manage.
Indeed. I hope that we would have time to discuss more about the economic recovery efforts, but I think it's way soon right now, Professor. We may have to wait for a couple of months in order to see the impact of this and how the government has managed it accurately. Thank you very much, Professor Karunaratne, for coming on the show. I appreciate your valuable feedback.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Get There. See you then. Bye.
I can feel it, something is happening. Is it attraction I'm overreacting to? Either way, this is not how I planned it. You pull me in completely. I can't drag myself from the oasis. Stop standing still, everything's changing. We'll be written deep into the walls round here. It pulls me in. I'm lost in the time. I don't care for the world outside. Oh, you could stay for the night in the palaces of my mind. You could stay for the night in the palaces of my mind. Every cup, every fight, kings and queens,